The aristocrat congratulates the duke. The pink-haired man reminds, the third son is already 18. Now with 3 grown sons, it's easier. But the younger one never woke up. Is he still out of mana? Then he should stick to his father's name. He hasn't been seen at banquets. Too shy? The brunette hides that Bliss would be laughed at, citing his poor health. Suddenly, Bliss bursts in and asks for help. Father thinks he himself is getting caught up in the gossip. Bliss says, Shayna isn't breathing. The family doctor is powerless. We need Dr. Harris. Father asks coldly, who is Shayna? They answer him, Bliss the guide, the magician for awakening mana. The father despises her and his son. Magicians awaken before the age of 10. Awakening, mana control. The earlier, the stronger the magic. Bliss was supposed to wake up at 10. But I couldn't even at 18. The blame is attributed to a weak conductor, although the Duke could have hired a master. Rotten grain will not germinate, no matter how much you water it. Bliss with dirty blood is a shame for the family. Father is angry. Why this noise? Let him bury her. They'll find another. Bliss refuses. Her heart is still beating. Father orders silence. Why drag a useless girl to your brother's party? He accuses his son of envy. He denies it. The father shouts. He is insignificant and envious. He is told to repent to his brother. Bliss wants to apologize. But he thinks, no one cares. Why apologize? Banquet, in honor of Michael and Bliss. But Bliss must not come near. He never celebrated. Only pain and shame. If you take away the emotions, what remains of him? He looks at Shayna. She must live. He bows. He says he didn't want to ruin the banquet and asked for help. Promises to accept any punishment if she survives. The father refuses to listen and remembers the Harris doctor. Thinks it's that easy. Orders that the body be removed and burned. Bliss screams, no! She's not dead. The butler reaches out to her. Bliss glares. The power is breaking out. Don't touch it. Mana is getting out of control. The father watches in shock. Is this awakening? Ice? He woke up today and suddenly there was such magic. The hall freezes. The father orders to stop. Bliss asks, does he really want to? How to stop if the conductor is not breathing? Who will stop him? The force continues to rush out. The nobility fears for their lives. Father understands. This is an excess of mana. Like a broken dam, the magician loses control. Without a conductor, the flow cannot be stopped. Bliss calls Shayna, tears in the eyes. Shayna thinks, why now? She failed. How to fix it? The plan was perfect, but Bliss ruined it. His awakening is linked to her death. He remembers how he called her his guide. He introduced himself, Bliss Huff. She bowed. Shayna, nice to meet you. She agreed to become a guide, although he had doubts. In the novel, she was the first to die. When she woke up, she saw a strange ceiling. And I realized what had happened. She was an ordinary reader. I loved hardcore 18+ novels. She should have immediately understood who she had possessed. Wavy pink hair, amber eyes, and a youthful face. The maids called her Shanna. She's in shock. What to do? She doesn't remember such a heroine. Nothing is known about her. She died, or was exiled. Perhaps the adopted daughter, the revealed truth, drove her out. If this is a romance, the future is dangerous. The men there are crazy. Any character is connected to the hero and risks ending up in his bed. The maid introduces herself. This is Anne from the outbuilding, leading to the third gentleman. As she approaches, Shayna is shocked by the place. Bliss will train here, and she will be accommodated nearby. Is this really a hero's clothes training? And here's the moment. She is his guide. She notices his black hair and light blue eyes. He is Bliss, from the Blue and Red Flame, a magician who was poisoned after the death of the conductor. Later, he met a new one and woke up. Now it was Shayna who became the inept one, so she's the character who dies at the beginning. Bliss asks to start the direction. He is waiting for instructions, but she doesn't know how. In the novel, this is intimate. There, under the guise of direction, the hero got closer to the heroine. They are teenagers now, and she is stalling. It is the first day. Offers to get to know each other for effective training. The guy asks the young lady if she wants to get to know him better, and she answers with a slight smile that she does. At that moment, she realizes there's no turning back and feigns confidence. However, the young man only coldly replies that all this is not true. The young lady can't help but think that if he had smiled at least a little, the conversation would have sounded different. A moment later, he says that he knew from the start that his direction would not go well, and the girl asks, surprised, what he means. The boy replies that the guide hired by his father is not at all the one he should have counted on, and he did not expect to see such a young girl in front of him. He adds that she's only 15 and has just received her certificate from the Mage Association. His older brothers were assigned experienced mentors, while he only has a girl 3 years his senior. Shayna quickly figures that if Bliss is 12 now, then there are 8 years left before she leaves. The boy calmly says that his father doesn't have any hopes for him, and to be honest, he wouldn't expect anything from himself either. The main character realizes that in front of her is the illegitimate son of Duke Huff. The Duke decided to keep the boy because he believed that precious blood flowed in him. But over time, it became clear that Bliss only had magical abilities and nothing outstanding. Then his father began treating him like an abandoned child of lower class. The Duke, unable to control himself, committed adultery with a young servant, and all the hatred for this act fell upon the innocent Bliss. At this point, the guy says that the young lady can leave. It won't be of any use anyway, so there's no point in pretending to be a guide. Shayna wonders, stunned, if he's really giving up on her so early. She knew he'd given completely one day, but she never expected it to happen at just 12. She feels a little sorry for him, and she suddenly grabs his hand. When she touches him, she is surprised because his body temperature is not at all like that of ordinary children. Shayna wonders why his hand is so cold. The brunette dryly declares that she won't help him in any way. But the pink-haired girl tells the young master not to give up, because creating a large vessel requires much more effort and time than a small one. This means that his awakening will take longer than others, but when he blossoms, his power will be so great that comparing it to others will be meaningless. The young man asks in surprise how she knows all this, and why is she so confident in her words. The young lady just smiles softly. She replies that she simply sees the young master's potential, although deep down she knows that she knows this because of the book she read, and he adds that therefore he too should not doubt himself. To help Bliss's direction proceed more effectively, Shayna begins living in his outbuilding. She realizes that as a conduit, she must not only direct mana but also nurture and educate the still-awakened child. From a broader perspective, these are the duties of a nanny and a home tutor, and usually magicians from ordinary families become guides. The more experience a magician has, the more valuable they are, and their abilities only grow with age. Sometimes families hire younger guides to ensure the process is calm and natural. But Duke Huff did not choose her for this reason, for Bliss's first guide was himself. He intended to personally awaken his son, but even at 10 years old he showed no results, and the Duke gave up. Now the girl understands that the guide was assigned out of fear of condemnation, but in fact it was done for the sake of economy, since she was chosen precisely because she cannot yet channel mana. And then the young lady despairingly thinks about how she can even inject mana into Bliss. She read in the book that the first stage is when the conductor pours his mana through the tip of his finger, and the student's mana responds. This means that a light touch is essential. She recalls that, in the novel, the two were close for a long time and one touch is clearly not enough for mana to appear. The girl tries to feel how the mana in her body passes to her fingertips. She tries her best to imagine this process, then slowly opens his eyes. But nothing happens. She screams, realizing that she failed again, and that today she still needs to do the meditation. After some time, she is already sitting opposite the main character and asks him to close his eyes and feel the mana flowing inside him, although for him this is the first time in the channeling process. The girl asks him not to argue and concentrate, because this is a real battle of his fortitude. The young man asks in surprise if this is really a battle, but he still agrees. Shayna realizes she's been stalling, trying to figure out the technique, while Bliss spends days meditating, and her conscience torments her. She realizes he can't spend the entire 8 years like this. Of course, she thought about leaving her position as a conductor, but it all comes down to a lifetime contract. She understands that either Bliss awakens successfully, or she must fall into an eternal sleep due to an accident, and only then will she be able to leave the Huff family. She despairingly wonders who came up with this irrevocable contract. Lifetime contracts are generally common, as awakenings rarely fail and the conductor is protected from sudden dismissal, but for her, this contract still feels like a nightmare. She wonders why she didn't switch places with the main character from the start. Maybe she should have pretended to be in a state of eternal sleep to annul the contract, or found the main character who would take Bliss with her, or simply hang on to the end, doing nothing. But she realizes she doesn't want to be with Bliss for long, because despite his beauty and charisma, he's destined for a mad obsession with the main character. A wonderful savior, the main character, appeared in his dark life. To ensure she would never leave, he carved a magical seal that would allow her location to be tracked. Realizing that she could not free herself, the main character gave in and closed her heart completely. In the end, the story ended with Bliss being satisfied with only the shell of the main character. These thoughts exhaust the girl, and she realizes that if he meets the main character, his character will remain the same as in the book. The young lady doesn't know whether she will fall under his hot hand if she stays close, so she needs to stay as far away as possible. And one more thing. Regardless of the original story, she is going to enjoy the life of a sorceress. The girl realizes that even if she can't inject mana into Bliss, she is still capable of exerting enough magic. At this moment, one of the maids knocks on the door of the room, and the young lady wonders if it is time for class already. The maid comes inside. The girl notices that the servants in this wing always have lifeless faces, but today the maid looks especially gloomy. The red-haired lady informs that the young master does not wish to study today, so the young lady can rest. The main character is surprised because the child, who was so eager to awaken, suddenly canceled the meeting. She wonders if he has realized that meditation is useless and carefully asks the reason. The maid replies that today the young master was chosen as the keeper, but the keeper's condition is rather peculiar. This seemed to greatly embarrass him. The young lady realized that he was most likely not just embarrassed, but upset. She gets out of bed and says that she will go to him. The maid reminds him that he refused the direction, but the young lady replies that this is not what she is going for. She understands that there are no real adults in this house. No matter what her relationship with the head of the family or the servants, if a child is feeling unwell, adults are obligated to comfort them. But everyone pretends that it doesn't concern them. And indifference is also a sin, especially when it comes to kids like Bliss. The girl stops at his door and knocks, saying that it is Shayna. And he turns to the young master. The guy replies that he already said so. He doesn't want to work on the direction today. The girl understands that the future-obsessed hero is now simply crying alone. Shayna says she didn't come for the direction. And he asks why then. The young lady replies that she simply missed him. There is no answer, and she understands that he is worried about the keeper. To avoid offending him, she quickly adds that she was joking and offers to talk. About the keeper. Then the young man finally opens the door. He asks if she is laughing at him because, in his opinion, in her eyes he looks pathetic, which is why she treats him like a child. The young lady wonders if this is what he's talking about, since he's only 12. She replies that she was just worried. He suddenly canceled the class, and she began to worry. Bliss abruptly declared that he wasn't a pathetic person for someone like her to worry about. The main character wonders if he is trying to hurt her, but she realizes that he simply does not know how to accept kindness, given the environment in which he grew up. She realizes that she is not at all like the people around him, but she still says that she is worried, because she's genuinely sad for him. She asks him to imagine the opposite situation, if she suddenly stopped being his guide and simply disappeared. The young man replies that she can't do that, because it's her job. The girl replies that she can, if he treats her carelessly, and asks if he won't worry about it then. But the guy just coldly asks why he should worry at all. The protagonist realizes he truly isn't interested in her. She didn't expect an obsession from the future, but she still has several years of working alongside him ahead of her. And in essence, she is just an insignificant third-rate character, a role she had already played. In her past life, she was a nobody, and now she is afraid that in this world, she will remain the same person. However, the young man calmly says that he understands everything, so she should stop. The girl is surprised and asks what he means, but the guy repeats that he understands her hints perfectly well and asks him to stop. The young lady wonders if this means he doesn't want to see her anymore and if she should just leave. But suddenly the guy adds that she should come in anyway, and she carefully crosses the threshold. Bliss explains that he only canceled the assignment because he had other things to do, as he needed to find out about the guardian who had chosen him. The girl clarifies whether the keeper really chose him, congratulates him, and asks permission to look at him. The guy answers without much emotion that he doesn't mind. The girl remembers that a keeper is a creature born by absorbing the mana of plants and animals. He chooses the mage he will serve for life, but if the master falls into eternal sleep, the guardian also disappears, returning to nature. Therefore, it is a great honor for the mage to be chosen by a powerful and devoted being. In the novel, Bliss was incredibly happy, because he was chosen first, before his brothers. Although he had not yet awakened, he already had limitless prospects as a magician, and now the disappointment is probably as great as the joy he had then. The young lady opens the carrier and realizes that in front of her is a completely inconspicuous keeper. That's why Duke Huff hated Bliss even more, believing he'd brought shame on the family, and his brothers openly mocked him. But the girl knows the truth from the novel. This fluffy little bundle is anything but simple. This is a snow-white dragon, with a snow-white body and eyes like black pearls. Its scales shine with the hue of opal, and the dragon itself is famous not only for its beauty, but also for its frightening cruelty and ruthlessness. He had not appeared for centuries, almost becoming a legend, and it was Bliss that he chose as his master. Apparently, the author decided to make Bliss the strongest in the world, and if he knew this now, he wouldn't be sad. The girl gently tells the boy that his guardian looks sweet and strong. The guy frowns and asks not to deceive him, but the young lady assures that he is speaking sincerely. You just have to look more closely. And suddenly she hears someone's voice addressed to the young magician. She looks around, wondering if she imagined it. The voice asks again if the young magician can hear it. The girl cautiously asks if the young gentleman hears anything strange, but he doesn't understand what she's talking about. At the same moment, the voice notices that its owner is unable to hear it. The guy asks who she is talking about, and the girl quickly replies that she is talking about no one. She looks at the dragon and realizes that the voice belongs to him. The guardian confirms this, and is even surprised that she can hear him. The girl is stunned, and the fluffy one says that he has a story that he wants to tell only to her. He asks to be taken to a place where his owner is not around. The young lady is confused, because in the novel, the keeper was silent until he grew up, and nowhere was it mentioned that he would speak to the inexperienced guide. She thinks about pretending not to hear anything, but the dragon asks point blank if she's pretending to ignore him. He insists that the matter is urgent and concerns the life of his master. Meanwhile, Bliss notices that the monster has suddenly become noisy, although a minute ago it was calm. The girl says that he seems uncomfortable and his body is cold. She suggests lowering the keeper into warm water, and the young man anxiously asks what will happen if he drowns. The girl assures that she will keep an eye on her, but the guy reminds her that this is something the servants should do, since she is a guide, not a maid. The young lady understands that this is more important than formalities, and explains that ordinary people have a hard time dealing with guardians, and in the future, it would be better if the young master himself takes care of him, so that they can become closer faster. After a while, she bathes the animal, and it capriciously remarks that the water should be neither too cold nor too hot, only human body temperature. The girl mentally calls him a picky eater. As she lowers the fluffy one into the water, she asks if the temperature is right, and the keeper happily replies that it is perfect. Suddenly, she notices a black spot spreading around him. The girl is frightened, wondering if some sinister energy is escaping from him. She is amazed at how much power and darkness can be hidden in such a small body. Fluffy calmly explains that he slept in the ground for a long time, and everything that has accumulated over this time simply comes out. The girl asks in surprise if it's really just dirt. She looks at the muddy water and cannot believe that these are just traces of nature, and the dragon asks with displeasure why she moved away. He says that now is not the time to panic over trifles, but the girl objects that such a quantity of dirt from such a tiny body can hardly be called a trifle, and then the dragon asks her to come closer. Fluffy declares that she's not afraid of his current appearance, but when he grows up, no one will dare look down on him anymore. The girl calmly replies that she understands, and he asks if she really doubts it. She assures him that she believes him because she knows his true nature. The guardian says that his true form is a snowy white dragon, born to bring peace to the world by fighting evil with the help of dark forces. The main character claps her hands and asks with interest if this is true, although in fact she already knows everything. She calls him the White Dragon because that name suits him best. Fluffy asks if she has any idea why he chose the third son of the Huff family, and the young lady suggests that it is because of his vast hidden mana potential. He confirms this and admits that if the conductor was able to notice this, then he will not judge her by her age. Then he hints that she should know about his master's problem, and the girl is confused, thinking that she doesn't know anything but can't admit it. She decides to simply nod, and the dragon says that his master's mana is completely blocked. The girl is amazed, because she hears about this for the first time. She thought that the late awakening was due to bad direction, but the dragon explains that this is why he spoke to her, and now the master is not even able to hear his voice. The young lady asks if his mana will ever be free. She recalls that in the novel, Bliss wakes up several years after meeting the main character, so there is nothing to worry about. But the White Dragon replies that if everything is left as is, the master may never awaken or do so abnormally, which is extremely dangerous. The mana accumulating inside is already causing harm to his body, and ultimately this can lead to plunging into eternal sleep. The girl asks, if the awakening goes well, will everything be okay? The dragon says that even then, the main problem will remain, and the owner may soon still be overtaken by the plunge into eternal sleep. The young lady is horrified as she thinks that she is leaving, and that one outcome awaits her in any case. She recalls that the events of the book begin a year or two after Bliss awakens. This means that it is not shown in the novel, but after the ending, he could well have fallen into eternal sleep, and his already miserable life would have become even more tragic. Fluffy explains that this is why he needs her help as a guide. The girl anxiously asks if she is obliged to participate, and whether it would not be better for the Snow White Dragon to do everything himself, but he replies that this is impossible. He still can't perfectly control his mana, and if he interferes now, they both risk falling into eternal slumber. When asked to grow faster, he replies that he can't speed up nature. By the time he reaches maturity, it may be too late, and he asks why she's resisting. The young lady is about to refuse, but honestly says she simply doesn't know what to do. Fluffy replies that she just needs to do her job as a guide. The girl clarifies whether to continue everything as it is now, but understands that then Bliss could fall into eternal sleep at a young age. The dragon asks if she has noticed that his body temperature is below normal, and the girl admits that she does not understand why his hands are so cold. He explains that the boy was born with a huge amount of mana, but it does not circulate and stagnates, harming his body and mind. Furthermore, Bliss suppresses her emotions, a habit that arose precisely because of her mana blocking, and he himself doesn't even realize it. The young lady realizes that his cold character in the novel may be a result of this problem, and if it is resolved, he will not become an obsessive character. The dragon asks what is easier, to start the circulation of mana or to teach him to express emotions, and the girl answers that the latter. He approves of her choice and says that she should help her master reveal his feelings. The young lady, shocked, asks him again what he means, and the dragon explains that if the owner learns to express emotions, it will be easier for him to handle mana, and he is not asking for something impossible. She can warm his body with the warmth of hers. His temperature is currently below normal, and once he warms up, it will be easier for him to relax and show emotion. The dragon notices her strange expression. The main character realizes that this is exactly how the main character acted towards Bliss in the novel. She kept him warm, and now the dragon invites her to do the same. The young lady indignantly reminds him that the young gentleman is only 12 and she is 15. She is confident that she will not be able to step over her moral principles, even if it is a fantasy world. And he categorically declares that he will not engage in such adult things. Fluffy asks her to wait, and mockingly remarks that her thoughts are much more insidious than they seem. He explains that he only meant holding hands, warming the owner through mana, and not what she thought. The girl sheepishly admits that she might have made a mistake and asks if simply holding hands will work. Fluffy replies that the method is simple, but if done regularly, it is quite effective. He explains that physical fitness is closely linked to mana, and that improving blood circulation and warming the body makes it easier to activate mana. Temperature can be changed both directly and indirectly. And, as he noticed, she had a talent for throwing his master off balance. He's not asking her to anger Bliss, but for him to start showing emotions, she needs to become his support system. That's why the dragon asks her to help, because he can't trust anyone else with such a request. The same applies to its owner. The girl understands that in order for the main character to appear, she has no choice but to help Bliss. Meanwhile, Fluffy warns that his owner is already on his way. The young lady looks at him in surprise and wonders if he is pretending to be nice in front of Bliss. The guy comes up to her and asks why she's taking so long, because he was already starting to worry that they had drowned. The girl quickly wraps up the fluffy one, apologizes, and says that she's already on her way. The dragon speaks quietly to the young lady. He notices the owner watching and asks her to try it and share your warmth with him. The young lady is at a loss and wonders if this really needs to be done right now. The guy watches her strange behavior with bewilderment, but she herself doesn't understand where to start. Then she asks the young master to hold the keeper. The guy looks at the white lump in surprise, and he mentally wonders if this is really his keeper. But still, he silently takes it in his hands. The young lady suddenly asks why his hands are so icy. The young man asks again if they are really cold, and she nods and says that this is not good, and carefully takes his hands. He asks what she is doing, and Shayna replies that she is just warming him up because her hands are warm. The girl feels the mana flowing along with the warmth, closes her eyes, and concentrates. The young man watches her in surprise, and suddenly his fingers tremble slightly. The main character thinks it was a reaction, but she's not sure if it worked. However, the guy abruptly pulls his hands away and says that this is not necessary. The girl asks him to wait, but he leaves, and she turns to the keeper, worried that she's ruined everything. Fluffy assures her that she did a good job. Over the course of 2 weeks, she changes her technique, following the white dragon's advice, and every day she warms Bliss's hands like a caring grandmother. But the result remains the same, and one day she discusses everything with the dragon again. The girl whispers that if she continues to touch him when he doesn't like it, it could backfire. The dragon reminds her that otherwise he might fall into eternal sleep. Shayna asks if his life is truly in danger, and the fluffy one replies that he must act sincerely, not out of a sense of duty. He adds that there is already progress, and the girl asks where exactly. The dragon notices that his master's hands have become warmer, and when she takes them again, the back of the boy's neck turns red. The girl whispers that he's probably just angry. The dragon praises her and advises her to further provoke her master's emotions. Shayna doesn't understand what exactly he means. Every day she worried that she was causing Bliss inconvenience, but today she had a good feeling. After all, the class would be held outside, and she had previously vowed to avoid training outside the home. She was a typical homebody. But in this world, there is no telephone, no television, no computer, and she literally goes crazy from boredom. So the white dragon's idea of training outdoors seems great to her, and she wonders why she didn't think of it before. Of course, they don't go into the city, they just take a walk near the outbuilding. The guy is already waiting for her. He asks what's in the basket, and the girl replies that it's a snack in case of hunger. The young man remarks that if they were seen, they would be thought to be going on a picnic. And he adds that the garden has long been abandoned because no one takes care of it. The young lady wonders if he is ashamed of his neglected appearance, but he says it doesn't matter. They came here for direction, not for rest. The young man continues walking in silence. Soon they find themselves in the garden, and the girl understands that this is not a slight neglect, but real chaos. She suggests moving into the shade, and they settle there. The young man spreads his jacket on the ground. Feeling her gaze, he asks what's wrong. The girl asks in surprise whether he took off his jacket for her. The guy replies that a gentleman will not allow a lady to sit on the ground, but if she does not want to, he will remove him. The young lady quickly sits down and thanks him. She says that he is very caring and will surely become popular among girls. The guy asks her not to say such strange things. The main character wonders if he is embarrassed. The dragon whispers for her to continue and confuse his master even more. And she literally captured the teenager's heart with her conversations about girls. The girl understands that she doesn't want to do this, but she has no choice. She says that she is sure that one day he will meet a beautiful girl and fall in love, because such a kind man will break many hearts. The guy abruptly asks her to shut up and asks if she would like it if he told her that she would meet a good man and fall in love. The young lady replies that yes, when she grows up, she will definitely meet a worthy man. And he, having met a good girl, will most likely marry her and will not look at others. The girl notices that he looks different and asks what happened. He seems sad to her. The young man quietly asks if she thinks she will be able to leave the outbuilding. He reminds her of the contract and says that if she doesn't wake up, she won't be able to leave either. And perhaps they will remain locked away forever, forgotten by everyone. He adds that he realized this a long time ago, but she doesn't seem to know what she's talking about when she talks about love and marriage. The girl is stunned. She doesn't understand why he says such dark things. And why does it seem like he is preparing her for a terrible ending with him? Because he sincerely believes that he will not wake up. But the girl decides not to give in to despair and refuses to believe that they are doomed. She says confidently that he will definitely wake up. And she asks him to focus on this, and she will still meet a handsome man. With broad shoulders and sculpted abs, the guy is surprised by her frankness. The main character waves her hand and says, "That's enough talking." And he suggests starting the lesson. The young man looks at her in surprise. After a while, he leans against a tree and sighs tiredly. The girl praises him for his efforts. And he suggests eating cookies and relaxing. She wants to wipe his face with a handkerchief, but he refuses, saying that he can handle it himself. At this moment, he suddenly starts coughing after tasting the cookie. And he asks why it's so strange. The girl, looking innocent, replies that there's nothing special about it. Shayna remembers adding a pinch of magic to make the taste unusual, as such sweets were popular in her past world. She begins to explain that these are special cookies. But the guy interrupts her and asks why she is doing all this, and whether even his guide is trying to make fun of him. The young lady immediately objects that it is just a joke and asks if he is interested in the texture, since in the distant country where she lived, such cookies were popular. The young man asks if he's talking about the melt-in-your-mouth cookies, and the girl confirms that yes, and everyone likes them. She tries it herself, and realizes that it turns out almost the same, and decides to make it a little harder next time. The guy just sighs heavily, and suddenly he notices that she looks a little strange, as if she's not from here. Shayna wonders if this is an insult, but the young man clarifies that she simply does not fit into the atmosphere of the estate. Then he notices something in her hands and asks what it is, and the girl replies that it is a wreath. She says she wove it herself and asks if it's beautiful. The young man replies that he wouldn't wear it, even if he were to fall into eternal sleep. The main character is perplexed by what he is talking about, and wonders if he decided that the wreath was meant for him. The girl is perplexed why he makes such hasty conclusions, and even calls her a mutant just because she behaves unusually. But she understands that since the conversation has gone this far, the situation can be turned to her advantage. She invites him to wear the wreath at least once, but the guy sharply asks him not to approach, and the young lady assures him that the flowers will really suit him. In response, he flares up and says that the wreath will suit her, not him. The girl freezes in surprise. The guy is embarrassed, and the main character can't understand whether it was a compliment or an attempt to hurt her. She still thanks him, but says that she wanted to give the wreath to him. His dark hair is like the night, his eyes are like the ocean, and when you add earth tones to that, it's the perfect combination. She is already reaching out to place the wreath on his head, but at that moment, a voice is heard, noticing what an interesting sight is before him. The young man shudders and turns to his father. The main character immediately understands who is in front of them. It's Duke Jonathan Huff, who coldly says he's come to find out why the boy left the outbuilding with the guide. And he saw that instead of practicing, they were chatting and having fun. The young man bowed and apologized. The Duke sharply asks not to call him father because he does not want to acknowledge such a son, and Bliss again quietly apologizes. Shayna notices that Bliss has never objected and is acting too submissive. She understands how cruel the Duke must be if the guy is only capable of uttering one word of apology. Then the young lady intervenes and says that the Duke has got it all wrong. It was she who suggested holding the session outdoors, as nature improves mana circulation and increases the chance of awakening. Bliss worked diligently with natural mana. They were simply taking a break to recuperate, and such a great mage should know that mana is closely linked to physical well-being. The Duke asks doubtfully if this is true. He points to the wreath and asks if that is also part of the practice. And do flowers on the head really help one sense mana better? Is that really how she was taught? The girl tries to answer, but the young man suddenly grabs her hand. She looks at him in surprise and quietly asks what happened. Bliss bows and says that he behaved stupidly and will not do it again. The young lady is stunned, but the Duke continues. He orders him to remember his position and not to disgrace the Hoff family anymore. Bliss, clenching her fists, promises not to make him worry. Later, the boy holds the dragon in his arms, and the young lady asks him not to worry so much. He quietly replies that everything is fine, and he adds that his efforts are still useless. Therefore, she should not waste her energy on this hopeless matter. The girl is at a loss for words after the Duke forbids her to leave the house. Bliss's fever rises, and he can't even leave his room. There was no mention of this in the novel, so the illness must not have been serious. But she is worried about something else. The workers, they avoid the Duke, and she feels like they avoid Bliss as well. She begins to doubt whether anyone cares about him. She asks the maid about his condition. She replies that the fever is still high, but she doesn't know anything else. She also can't answer the question about nutrition. The girl understands that food is being brought to him, but no one is monitoring whether he eats or takes his medication. She asks if a doctor has been called. The maid says she doesn't know, because she only works in the outbuilding and hardly communicates with the others. Then the main character reminds that someone is reporting to the Duke about the young master's condition. The maid looks at her in surprise, and the young lady realizes that she was right. She remembers how the Duke appeared too suddenly that day, so someone is informing. The girl asks to tell the Duke that the third son of the Huff family has been ill for a week and no measures have been taken. The maid is irritated, considering her too persistent, because she herself was sent to this dilapidated outbuilding without her desire. And now some girl is trying to teach her, like a mistress. She reminds him that even though her family has fallen apart, she is the daughter of a baron and is not obliged to please a commoner, but she still coldly says that she will take the remark into account. Then he adds that everyone has their own responsibilities and shouldn't interfere with someone else's work. The young lady gets the hint. She admits that she may be considered arrogant and a weak conductor. But even so, she cannot ignore the young master and asks if they really do not feel responsible for his illness. The woman answers negatively. Then the young lady reminds that Bliss is the owner of the outbuilding, and everyone was hired to serve him. She notices that it is time to bring dinner. She says she'll take it herself, though the maid objects. The girl replies that since she's not looking after the sick person, she'll do it herself. After all, she has experience in caring for the sick. The main character thinks that Anne should smile more often. Soon she knocks on the room and announces that she has brought food. The guy asks her to leave everything and go away, but from his hoarse voice, she understands that the illness has receded a little. The girl wonders if she's gone too far with Anne. And suddenly he hears a roar. She rushes inside the room, and he sees Bliss on the floor, breathing heavily. She runs up and feels that he is literally burning. The young man asks with difficulty why Shayna is here. She apologizes and says she should have come earlier. The guy takes her hand and asks what she is apologizing for. After all, she didn't do anything bad. The girl realizes that he fell asleep right during the conversation. And then the dragon turns to her, asking why she came so late. She clarifies whether this is really the keeper. He replies that he expected her earlier. The girl apologizes and hopes Bliss has eaten and taken his medication. But the fluffy one says that he ate almost nothing. The girl thinks with relief that it's good that she came. She notices that her temperature is not going down due to exhaustion. The dragon believes that the reason is more psychological, since after their efforts, the owner began to gradually change and open up. But the meeting with his father closed him off again, and now he simply has no desire to recover. The main character looks at the young man in shock. After a while, he opens his eyes, and he feels that his body has become lighter, as if the fever has gone away. He turns his head, and he sees a young lady nearby. He says her name quietly, and thinks why she is here. Could it be that she was looking after him all this time? Suddenly, he hears the voice of the dragon, rejoicing that the master's condition has improved. The young man sits up abruptly and asks who said that. And did he misheard? Fluffy is scared. The guy turns around and looks at Shayna. Words spoken in the heat come to mind. That he doesn't want to return to that house where he is afraid. He then said that he would do everything as she said, and he didn't need anything, as long as she didn't leave. The main character then squeezed his hands and promised that she would not leave him, and will remain next to the young master. The guy looks at the young lady silently and sighs heavily. He feels fatigue creeping up on him. He has almost no strength left, and decides to just lie there a little longer. Time passes, the season changes, and Bliss's 13th birthday arrives. Before the evening banquet, Shayna sits quietly in her room. Her mood is gloomy. She wonders if there's any point in waiting for the banquet at all, since everyone already knows how it's going to go. The maid will simply place the candle in the cake and it will be blown out. Bliss and Michael were born in February, just a few days apart, so they celebrated together. Formally, the holiday was for two, but Michael was always the center of attention. When Bliss walked into the room, the Huff family pretended not to know him, and the guests whispered behind his back, so his departure looked more like an escape. He returned to the outbuilding and spent the rest of the day in bed. No congratulations, no gifts. The young lady thinks how lonely he is. She wanted to arrange a separate celebration for him, but she understands that celebrating a birthday together is even more painful. Looking at the box in her hands, she doubts whether this gift will also turn out to be useless. Since they couldn't celebrate together, she decided to at least make a special gift using magic. There were some difficulties during creation, and she had to ask the white dragon for help. Now all she has to do is quickly give it to him. She walks into Bliss's room and asks if he is there. But the room is empty, and she is surprised. The book said that Bliss didn't show up at the banquet, so he shouldn't have been there. But suddenly he finally plucked up the courage to go, because recently she felt a weak response from his mana. And the white dragon said he heard his voice. She wants to share this success. But still, he is only a 13-year-old teenager. She decides to check out the banquet hall. She doesn't want to be caught by the Huff family, but curiosity gets the better of her. The novel said that the older brothers were handsome, though not as handsome as Bliss. If you see them, you can imagine what he'll be like as an adult. Besides, she's unlikely to be recognized from afar. She approaches the entrance and the servant bows. He asks her to state her name if she was invited. There is no invitation, but she says that she is the guide of the host of today's banquet, Bliss Huff, and her name is Shayna. The purple-haired boy stares at her. Then he allows her to pass, and she thanks him. The main character enters the hall, and then they announce the arrival of the young master Bliss Huff's conductor. All the aristocrats turn and start looking at her, but she doesn't understand what happened. Turning to the man at the door, she realizes it was done on purpose, to make her look awkward. A minute later, she manages to hide behind a column. She decides to quickly find Bliss, give him the gift, and leave. Looking around the room, she wonders where he is. Suddenly, someone comes up to her and asks what she is doing here. The girl shudders. The guy coldly asks what the conductor Bliss is doing at this holiday. From his tone, she realizes it's Michael, the youngest of the older brothers. She bows and says she's come to see Bliss. Michael asks why she is looking for him. And she adds that there is no place for people like her here, because only aristocrats come here. Shayna apologizes and says she will leave. But he suddenly pushes her against the wall. And he asks if she really decided to come to the banquet in his honor and just leave. The girl congratulates him on his birthday. He asks, is it really only in words? Pointing to the box, he demands to give the gift. Shayna says it's for Bliss, and Michael sarcastically remarks that it's not his birthday present. She explains that it is also Bliss's birthday and apologizes for not having a gift for him, promising to prepare one later. But Michael snatches the box from her hands. And he declares that he wants this particular gift. The girl is shocked by his behavior and thinks that for a 15-year-old, he behaves too childishly. She asks to return the gift, and he asks what is so valuable in it. Opening the box, he asks if these are gloves, and she asks him to give them back. He mockingly says that they are cheap things from the city, and then remarks that they are enchanted. He demands to explain the spell, threatening to ruin them. The girl can barely restrain herself from hitting him. She pulls herself together and repeats that the gloves are meant for Bliss, and the spell has nothing to do with Michael. He notices that she is braver than Bliss, and he asks why she allows herself to talk to him like that. He compares her to a worm, but she reassures herself that there are many people around and he won't risk crossing a line. He gets irritated that she keeps looking into his eyes, and asks how dare she. At this moment, someone calls Michael. He turns around and asks if it's Henry. The older brother replies that it's his holiday, and there's no point in making a scene. Michael blames the girl for everything. Henry calmly calls his name again, and he claims that the guide Bliss is making fun of him. Henry clarifies whether he is talking about Bliss's conductor. He introduces himself as the eldest son of the Huff family, Henry Huff. The main character responds politely and states her name. Henry says that Michael seems to have caused her trouble and asks what happened. Shayna realizes she shouldn't have caught his eye. On the surface, Henry appears calm and neutral towards Bliss, but deep down he despises him. After Bliss awakens, Henry will be tormented by an inferiority complex and, together with Prince Fabian, will plot against him. Now Shayna understands that Michael is like a small-time bully, Henry is a calculating player, and Prince Fabian is the mastermind of the whole game. She replies that nothing serious happened, just a misunderstanding. Henry clarifies whether this is really a misunderstanding. He asks if it's all about the gloves and asks Michael to return them. Michael throws down his gloves and says he doesn't need them. Henry tells him to go to his father, and he leaves. Henry stays with the young lady. He asks if she has come to Bliss, and she confirms. Henry notices that Bliss hasn't been here and advises her to stay out of his way. She agrees and resolves to never show up again. Then he asks if she had dinner. Hearing a negative answer, he offers to take some food and share it with Bliss. The girl is surprised by such a proposal, and he begins to think that whoever is offering her food can't be a bad person. He tells her not to be shy, but, turning around, she notices a strange expression on his face, and he wonders whether he should have refused, although it is still reasonable to satisfy his hunger. Suddenly a chuckle is heard nearby. One of the women notices that the girl is taking too much food. The other one asks to speak more quietly, but the first one replies that even if she hears, it's okay, because she doesn't look like a beggar, but she still acts as if she's stealing from a banquet. The main character gets angry and realizes that this was not a kind gesture, but a carefully planned humiliation. Now she clearly sees that everything was set up, and she understands that this guy is a real scoundrel, and she was too quick to believe in his kindness. It all started when he offered to get her some food. Now he's clearly confused, because the taunt didn't work, and you only have to look at his face. When the main character turns to those ladies, they are visibly frightened. The young lady understands that sometimes it is enough to just look calmly like this. She then uses magic to quietly raise the glass of wine in one of the women's glass. The next second, the drink spills, and the ladies find themselves doused, panicking and asking what happened. The young lady leaves with the food, deciding that anyone who dares to mock a mage must be prepared for an answer. Now she must quickly get to the young master. Meanwhile, Bliss sits in the garden under a tree with the keeper. The main character approaches and does not understand why he went out into the cold. The guardian quietly asks if she has returned. The girl notices that Bliss is scratching the dragon's chin, and he clearly likes it. The guy lays out his jacket, and she asks him to put on a coat because it's cold. He replies that he was hot. She thanks him and notes that he looks calmer than she expected. She asks if he's eaten, and when he says no, she's delighted and offers to eat together. He agrees. The girl says that the food is delicious and not at all like in the outbuilding. Bliss looks at her and asks if she brought it from the banquet hall. She confirms. He asks who allowed her to do this and whether she met his brothers. She wonders how he figured it out. Shayna replies that she was busy eating and didn't talk to anyone. But judging by the reaction, taking food from someone else's banquet is considered bad form, and she admits that she didn't know about it. She asks what she could do, because she couldn't throw away the food she'd already taken. The girl suggests they start eating and says she's brought forks. She understands the shame will be remembered, but let the good times go with it. Bliss picks up a fork, but she stops him, saying it's not right yet. He is surprised and asks why. The girl lights a candlestick from the lamp, and he wonders what she's doing. She says it's impossible without a candle. The flames grow stronger and they become slightly frightened. She shields the flame with her hand and asks him to make a wish and blow out the candle. He asks why, and she explains that it's what the birthday boy does. He says he's never heard of this before, and the fire grows even stronger. She asks him to blow it out faster, but it doesn't work the first time. After several attempts, they blow out the flame together. The main character smiles and asks if he made a wish. He asks if it's okay to eat cake now, and she nods. While he is eating, she takes out her gloves, and he says that this is his gift. He is surprised, and she explains that the gift is inexpensive because she doesn't have much money. Besides, Michael tore the packaging, making things even worse. It seems the more she tries, the sadder Bliss becomes. She's afraid he's not even happy. The girl explains that she put a spell on the gloves, so they fit him perfectly, but she doesn't know if he'll like the gift. She adds that if she doesn't like them, it's okay, she just needs to put them on. He asks what kind of spell it is. She replies that it is a warmth spell because his hands are always cold. The gloves will help keep her warm, and she apologizes for not being able to do better. Bliss looks at them and says that everything is fine, thanks her, and remarks that if he puts them on, they won't have to hold hands anymore. The girl is about to agree, but the keeper cries out indignantly. She quickly explains that things work a little differently. The dragon approves of her, and the young lady adds that she can't hold his hands all the time, so gloves will help. The guy puts them on and is surprised that it really does feel warm, after which he thanks her. After a while, she smears cake cream on his cheek, and he asks irritably what she is doing. She replies that this is what friends do on their birthdays, and he suggests that if she doesn't like it, she should respond in kind. He really does smear her with cream. Both she and the keeper are surprised. The guy asks if that's how you treat your enemies. The girl takes more cream and says that's how you treat your enemies. And with friends, he is even more generous. He gets angry and calls her closer. She refuses and asks if he thinks it's that easy with her. Suddenly, she trips over a rock and starts to fall. The guy is surprised. He catches her, but she still falls on him. He asks her to be careful because he barely managed to catch her. She blushes with shame and apologizes, but at that moment she gets cream in her face. She looks at him and notices that he can't hold back his laughter. He says with a smile that she looks funny. He laughs so hard that he starts holding his stomach, and she realizes that he's getting weak from laughing. The girl wonders if this is the first time he laughs like that, but is afraid to ask. She smiles and says that this is the first time she has seen him like this. He gets embarrassed, and she adds that she wants to see him like this more often, because it means he is happy. She takes his hand and shows him how his laughter has warmed her. The guardian remarks that character change can only be achieved through personal choice. The girl understands that he is right. Her efforts are nothing without his decision. She removes her hand and says that she hopes his hands will warm up as easily as he laughs now. He squeezes her hand and says she's strange. She's surprised, and he adds that she's always smiling and kind. The girl wonders if this is really praise. Bliss says she doesn't belong here. She should be among better people. He wants her to live among those who are like her and be happy, because in a few years she could become like him. And although it is none of his business, he does not want her to change. He doesn't want her eyes to lose the sparkle and for her to remain locked here forever. So he asks her to stop being his guide. She's surprised and reminds him of the contract. He replies that a way can still be found because his opinion also matters. The young lady looks at the keeper, waiting for a reaction. The dragon merely sighs and says he can't convince his master otherwise. The girl realizes this is her chance to leave. But she wonders what will happen to Bliss if she leaves and whether the Duke will find another guide. If the future doesn't change, he might fall into eternal sleep, but she's not yet so attached that she can't live without him. However, her conscience torments her. She asks how he can ask her this so easily. After all, it will hurt him if she agrees, so she says that she doesn't want to leave. He is surprised and asks if she understood his words. She replies that she did, but he asks why he is sure that she will change. She declares that he will become like her and decides to go all the way, helping him. Shayna says that he should trust her, meet the main character, and live a happy life. She assures me she can handle it. After a harsh winter, spring is finally coming, with green shoots and flowers. Nature is drawn to life, but this warm spring does not please it. She wants time to fly by, as if she closed her eyes and spring and summer disappeared. Shayna, who once loved spring, has hated it since last year. Bliss was then 16 years old and participated in the Huff family's competitive hunt for the first time. As a guide, she couldn't refuse. The hunt was akin to an annual cleanup of the area, where the aristocrats put dangerous animals into eternal slumber. At first, she imagined it as a scene from a grand fantasy. But when Bliss stood in front and she helped gather herbs behind, a huge monster suddenly attacked her and roared so loudly that she lost consciousness. The novel only spoke of the roar of the beast that Bliss put into eternal sleep, but no one mentioned that the beast would be so huge. She understands that in the book her heroine died while hunting, and if they met again she would not survive. Luckily, the knight quickly decapitated the beast, but she had to endure ridicule, even from Bliss. Every time she saw the beast, she fainted, and that day became a trauma for her. She fears that if things continue, by the time Bliss is 20, she will be plunged into an eternal sleep, as in the novel. She thinks she could at least stage it earlier. Now Bliss is 17, and she has about 3 years left, but she still hasn't figured out a way to save herself. She needs to find a way out urgently, although she notices how much he has grown and begun to shine. At 13, he was pale and sad, and she wanted to crush into dust anyone who made him cry. The young lady recalls how, 2 years ago, he suddenly grew taller than his older brothers. His muscles gradually developed, and his body became strong and powerful. She wonders if his soul has grown as strong, having once wounded his heart and left a scar. She wonders what he would have become if she hadn't been there, because then she could have left when he asked. And now she doubts whether it is worth raising this topic again. Suddenly, he will ask her to leave again. Suddenly, she notices Bliss looking at her, and for a moment she's startled, as if he's reading her mind. She asks if he's finished preparing, and he says yes. He has grown so tall that she has to look up, and she wonders if he will continue to grow, since he is only 17. And then a memory of what must happen on a hunt at this age strikes her. She realizes it's a serious problem she'd completely forgotten about. It was at 17 that Bliss was wounded during a competitive hunt. At that moment, he noticed a strange expression on her face. In the novel, this was part of his brother's plan, and the scar on his right hand remained forever. Later, the main character will sympathize with him precisely because of this scar. Shayna considers warning him, but she's not a fortune teller, and he won't believe her. This isn't a wound that will send her into eternal sleep, but she still doubts. She calls out to him and he asks what happened. The girl asks him to be careful. And don't forget to look around. He replies that it is rather she who should be more careful not to faint again, but she still asks him to return unharmed. He smiles and tells her not to worry, and she notices that he looks pleased. But she doesn't understand why he suddenly became cheerful. Michael approaches them and sarcastically remarks that they are never apart and that they seem to have a great relationship. Shayna recognizes him immediately. Michael constantly mocks Bliss and takes it out on the servants of the outbuilding. Because of this, the servants became cold towards Bliss, considering him the culprit of their humiliations. In fact, Michael is taking out his anger over the incident at the banquet. Every time she sees this, Shane feels sorry for Bliss, but he seems oblivious to both the ridicule and the alienation. Michael reminds Bliss that he is 17, and he confirms it. He then turns to Shayna and asks her age. She replies that she is 20. Michael is surprised that she is already an adult, because she looks completely different. He repeats their ages and says that there are rumors in society about romantic feelings between them. Shayna just thinks that he would leave quickly. Michael summons his falcon, and when it lands on his hand, he boasts about a guardian named Ruby. He offers to say hello to the guardians, but the white dragon and Shayna show no interest. Fluffy remains calmly in place. Suddenly the falcon screams and flies away, and Michael is perplexed. The white dragon notices that the bird, unlike its master, is acting insolently in front of someone more powerful. Shayna realizes that the guardians sense true power. Michael calls the bird back, but it unexpectedly hits him in the face with its wing. The main character can barely contain her laughter. Michael notices this and asks if she is laughing. He is outraged that she dared. As he takes a step towards her, Bliss steps between them and congratulates her brother on his choice of guardian, wishing him to shine. Michael quips that he will shine, unlike Bliss, his guardian and guide. Bliss calmly says that her brother talks too much. He adds that his lack of abilities is his problem, and that the guardian and guide aren't to blame. Michael is shocked. Shayna panics and thinks that she can't anger Michael, because he is the one who wounds Bliss during the hunt. She understands that the situation needs to be smoothed over urgently and asks to wait, but the white dragon whispers that she should not interfere. He will handle it himself. He orders the falcon to do something and assures Shayna that only the bird can hear his voice. The girl thinks that this is not the issue, because if Michael gets angry, everything will get worse. The dragon threatens the falcon that if he doesn't dirty his master, he will do it himself. Shayna understands that the dragon is still young and not that strong, but the bird clearly feels the pressure. Her face seems to reflect an internal conflict, and suddenly she closes her eyes and tenses. The next second, everything falls right on Michael, and he screams. He tries to hit the bird and shouts if it has gone crazy. The white dragon is pleased to note that the bird's courage saved his master. Shayna realizes it was all a cunning game. Michael is about to say something, but notices people approaching. He turns sharply and motions for them to wait. Shayna thinks that it's not Bliss's fault, but the Guardian's, but Michael is clearly angry. And perhaps this will change the course of events. She is confident that Bliss will not fall into eternal sleep before the events of the novel begin. He asks her to be careful, and she responds in kind. Later, Michael angrily punches the wall. Henry coldly remarks that he has disgraced himself and asks when he will stop quarreling with his inferiors. Michael promises to teach him a lesson on the hunt. Henry asks what he's planning, and he replies he'll shoot Bliss, as if mistaking him for an animal, but with an arrow with a spell, so that he would not fall into eternal sleep, but would remain with a serious wound. Henry doubts it will scare him, and he says that Bliss cannot be broken in this way. Michael asks what to do then. Henry suggests aiming an arrow at the conductor, as she recently turned 20. A magical wound on a girl will look more tragic. Meanwhile, the main character walks through the forest of Mount Prelude, where the hunt is in full swing. The Huff family's mages and knights walk ahead, checking security, while the servants gather herbs in the depths. Bliss, although not awakened, is at the forefront, having honed his fencing skills over the years. Shayna realizes that she needs to be focused too. She notices a stranger and asks who it is. She is told that it is a pharmacist sent by the Schneier family, whom she has never heard of. They tell her that he will stay to help not only now, but for several years. Usually, the hunt brings together healers and knights from different families, as this year from the Cooper family. But in recent years, the practice has become rare, and she wonders why. The maid says that no one lends people out for years without a profit, which means the Schneier family wants to get closer to the Huffs. Marquis Karl Schneier seems to be desperately seeking an alliance. Shayna doesn't remember him in the novel, and thinks perhaps his role was minor. Despite his title, the servants speak of him with disdain, and she assumes his family has become weak. She pulls herself together because she needs to think about her own safety. She doesn't have the status to worry about others, but she still notices the pharmacist nearby and begins to worry about him. He seems dangerous or, on the contrary, too vulnerable, and they go deeper and deeper into the mountains. She tells him to keep up and walk alongside her. Introduces herself as Bliss Huff's guide, Shanna. He is silent, and she asks if everything is okay. The man removes his hood, apologizes, and introduces himself as a student of Marquis Karl Schneier, named Noah. The main character looks at him attentively. He seems like a person who is easily influenced and doesn't know how to say no. She asks if this is his first time hunting, and he sheepishly confirms. She says there's no need to worry, because the front line is reliable. He thanks her for her concern. Noah adds that they are hunting companions and should support each other. He agrees, although he still looks tense. Later, they start collecting herbs. Shayna admits that she still doesn't have a good understanding of medicinal plants. He promises to help the Huff family as much as he can. She says with a smile that she will count on him. But from his face, she understands that she may have said too much. Her gaze is drawn to a bright red flower she has never seen before. She reaches out to him, admiring his beauty. But Noah sharply asks her not to touch the flower, and she asks in surprise what's wrong. He says tensely that this flower is not as harmless as it seems. At this moment, Noah suddenly notices that he is still holding the young lady's hand. Realizing that it was too harsh and impolite, he immediately steps aside and apologizes, saying that he is truly sorry. The main character calmly replies that everything is fine, but asks why he did this. Noah explains that he simply stopped her because the flower is poisonous. The young lady, surprised, asks if that's true. She remembers that it is the devil's dream, a rare plant that, in small doses, acts as a painkiller and causes hallucinations, making one forget about pain. But if a whole bud is used, a person enters a state of suspended animation. Breathing is barely felt, the pulse slows, and ultimately, an eternal sleep may occur. Noah adds that many fools have eaten the entire bud for visions, but in suspended animation the hallucinations disappear, and only the awareness of the body fading away remains. The main character asks if there is an antidote, and he replies that if the suspended animation did not last long, the poison can be neutralized. At that moment, an idea flashed through her mind. This was the way to escape her fate. Her thoughts speed up. The plan is simple. Eat the devil's sleep, go into suspended animation and be declared dead. People will think that she has fallen into eternal sleep, and the contract will be terminated. She will then take the antidote and be revived. The plan seems perfect, but a problem arises. If she is buried or cremated, how will she have time to drink the antidote and escape? She understands that she cannot do without an assistant. The most logical option is the Duke's family physician. If he helps, she'll be able to leave the estate immediately upon awakening. But it's unlikely that the doctor will agree, and she can't bribe anyone. She doesn't have money. She thinks that in life, there are no random saviors, like in the movies. Noah notices her confusion and asks if everything is okay, and then she realizes he's not just a doctor, but a pharmacist who can prepare an antidote. He doesn't avoid her and seems too gentle to refuse. If you present it as a request from a friend, rather than a strange ritual involving a supposed kidnapping, he might agree. She suddenly grabs his hands and calls him her savior. He blushes, and she says she would be happy to have such a friend. And she asks him directly if he wants to be friends with her. Noah is surprised by the suddenness, but he still agrees, saying he wants to be her friend. Shayna is surprised he didn't run away and wonders if he's too lonely. Noah mentally notes that everything is going according to plan. He remembers how the gentleman called him and said that he would have to carry out any order. He asked to be called Carl or teacher. Carl explained that he wanted to send him to the Huff family for a few years, because there was a genius there. Noah asked if he was talking about the third son, and Carl confirmed that he was talking about the boy chosen as the guardian before awakening. When Noah doubted the guardian's power, Carl explained that these creatures were just pretending to be nice. What matters isn't his appearance, but the fact that he chose an unawakened boy. The Schneier family is currently in dire straits. All their talents sank into eternal sleep, and only mediocre heirs remained. Carl said he was not going to give up. He added that Noah would meet Bliss's guide, and he asked what to do next. The answer was simple. Make friends with her. Noah was scared because he didn't know how to get close to people, but Carl assured her that the girl could make the first move herself. This is a chance for a loner like him, and he will receive further instructions later. Then Noah agreed to carry out the order, and now he understands that Carl was right. The girl herself offered friendship. Shayna notices that he looks too pleased, but at that moment, someone calls her. The maid informs that the young master needs her help. Shamoyna doesn't understand why Bliss would need her. He's quite strong, after all. That means something serious has happened. She doesn't waste time thinking and asks the maid to show her the way. Soon she finds herself in the forest and calls out to the young master. He is surprised and asks what she is doing here, demanding that she come back. She says she was called, but he warns her how dangerous it is here. She explains that the maid said he was looking for her. Bliss realizes that this is Michael's doing. And soon Michael himself appears, mockingly noting that the conductor has arrived after all. Bliss says Shayna has never hunted before, and it's dangerous. Michael counters that Bliss is not a mage either, and asks if his guide would be more useful. Shayna is painfully aware that she is almost useless in combat. Michael assures her that they won't let her fall into eternal sleep, but adds mockingly that she is clearly uneasy. He says that he will give her a simple task and asks if she can use purification magic. She confirms and remembers that the animals' bodies need to be cleaned, otherwise poisonous gas will be released. Michael explains that after the animals are put into eternal sleep, she must cleanse their bodies, as there will be no time for each one separately. Shayna understands that she can handle it, because it doesn't require much effort. She agrees, and Bliss asks if she's sure. She replies that everything will be fine. Michael adds that there are no animals on Pelud that can be reborn. Although the harsh winter may have exacerbated some of them, Shayna feels like he's trying to intimidate her. Bliss quietly tells her to stay close. She promises not to leave. He nods, and suddenly touches her hair. She is embarrassed, because he has never done this before, but it turns out he simply removed the leaf. She realizes her worries were in vain, and mentally compares it to the situation when someone removes pepper stuck in their teeth. Soon the mages deal with the beasts, and she notices that Henry is fighting almost alone. He combines magic and physical strength, shining brighter than anyone else. Michael calls her to cleanse the body of one of the monsters. She agrees, noting that Michael is bragging, even though he has put fewer animals into eternal sleep than Henry. As she begins to cleanse, something suddenly flickers, and she asks what it is. Michael shouts for her to move away, as if the beast is still alive. She is sure that the beast has already fallen into eternal sleep because there is no pulse. And suddenly she sees an arrow aimed at her. Everything was a setup. Someone screams her name. A moment later she falls to the ground, feeling a nagging pain. But the arrow missed her. She turns around and realizes that Bliss has blocked her with his body. NK. She tries to stop him. And in horror, he sees an arrow in his body. He falls and she calls him. After a while, he opens his eyes and she asks if he is awake. He looks at her. She gives him water. He finds out that he slept for a week. He asks if she looked after him, and she says yes. He says it must have been hard for her. She replies that he suffered because of her, and she had to help. He notices that she is acting differently. He thinks she blames herself too much. With a smile, he asks her not to blame herself. She asks tearfully how she cannot blame him since he almost fell into eternal sleep. He calmly replies that everything worked out and they are both alive. She cries, remembering how he didn't come to his senses for a week, how he didn't answer her call, and how his body seemed heavy, almost lifeless. She says the fever lasted for 3 days and he might not wake up. She apologizes for his pain, and he repeats that everything is fine. She asks him not to treat himself so carelessly because of her. And Bliss gets annoyed when she hears her put herself down. The young lady says that since he has woken up, she will call the pharmacist. Bliss suddenly realizes that she didn't even thank him for saving her, but only apologized for his injury. Walking down the corridor, the girl remembers his words about how he did not fall into eternal sleep and that everything was fine with them. But she knows the truth. He was on edge. If Noah hadn't heard the noise and provided first aid, things could have ended differently. Fortunately, Noah's abilities proved to be up to par. Michael, however, never received any punishment. He claimed he thought the animal was still alive, which is why he fired. Ultimately, he was only advised to be careful. Since Dukov now had Noah, they did not call another healer. Shayna was shocked not only by Bliss's wound, but also by the way events had deviated from the novel. The scar matched, but the arrow should have hit his bicep and left a small mark, not such a severe wound. She wonders if it was because of her that everything turned out differently and whether it can be fixed. The thought of preventing his wounds and his immersion into eternal sleep never left her for a day. And now she comes to the conclusion that perhaps, for his safety, she needs to disappear. The best time is to leave quickly, in one day, but for that she needs an assistant, and that very same poisonous flower. She knocks on the pharmacist's door and says it's her. Noah gets up and asks her to leave, but she replies that she came to tell him that the young gentleman has woken up. He is surprised and happy, and says that he will immediately check his condition. Sheena realizes that Noah can definitely help her. Time passes, and by the end of the year, she feels like the right day has finally arrived. After the hunt, she made a lot of effort to get closer to Noah for the plan, and now they are really friends. She decides that she can tell him everything. After some time, Noah comes into her room. She says it's cold outside, let him come in, and he agrees, although he doesn't understand why. She locks the door, and he is surprised, but silent. The girl asks him to listen to one request. He understands that this is why he was called, and asks what it was about. Shayna says she needs help getting out of here. He's shocked and asks for an explanation. She states outright that she wants to leave this place. He asks if she is planning to leave Bliss. When she confirms, he remarks that their relationship seemed good. She explains that she wants to take a break and visit her family, but her contract doesn't allow it. Noah asks how she can help. She replies that the contract will expire either when Bliss awakens or if she enters eternal slumber. And he suggests faking her descent into eternal sleep. He is amazed by her determination. He warns her that she'll have to hide for the rest of her life and won't be able to officially work as a magician. She replies that she knows. He suggests visiting family secretly and not making hasty decisions, but she says she has been thinking about it for 5 years. He asks if she had planned this from the very beginning of her service, and she nods. He admits it's difficult, and she apologizes for the difficult request. He asks for time to think. With the new year approaching, Noah takes a vacation and goes to live with the Schneier family, postponing his answer. A few weeks pass, and Shayna begins to worry. Finally, he returns with flowers and says that this is exactly how many are needed for the plan. She looks at him in surprise. He claims that he will help, although it is clear from his expression how difficult it is for him to deceive. She thanks him and says she will never forget his kindness. All that remains is to carry out her plan. Today is the banquet in honor of Bliss's 18th birthday and Michael's 20th, and it is today that she will stage her descent into eternal sleep. She doesn't want to do this on Bliss's birthday, but right now there will be a lot of carriages at the estate, and she can hide among them. Noah reported that Marquis Schneier would also arrive and prepare a shelter for her. She asked if the Marquis knew about the plan. Noah replied that no, and that she would need to leave the carriage before reaching the Schneiers. She promised to handle it. She assures him that she will do everything to avoid setting him up. The plan is simple. After the banquet begins, she will drink poison and fall into suspended animation. Noah will report her, she will be found unconscious, and will be declared to have been put into eternal sleep. Then they won't call the family doctor, and Noah will take care of the body himself. He will give her the antidote and she will quietly disappear into the Marquis' carriage, jumping off before the endpoint. With magic, she can survive anywhere. She convinces herself she can handle it. She thinks that Bliss will be scared of her falling into eternal sleep, so she decides to see him one last time. When she comes to him, He asks why she is here. The thought of never seeing his face again brings a strange mixture of joy and sadness. She says she's bored and wants to work on her direction. She starts classes, and he says he no longer needs her direction. He's surprised. She explains that once he learns to sense mana, he will have to learn on his own. He asks if she's using serious words to hide her boredom. She replies that she's sincere. She assures him that the conductor is easily replaced. He looks at her in surprise. She says goodbye and wishes him a pleasant reading. The white dragon jokes that she might be going through a weird phase as she's been acting more and more unusual. Bliss watches her leave silently. Shayna convinces herself that she has done enough and is holding up well. While the guests are having fun, she sits with tea made from red petals. She drinks it and lies down on the bed. Now all that remains is to wait for the poison to take effect. She closes her eyes and suddenly hears her name being called. This is Bliss. He says he's coming in. He came because he was worried about her words, but he was surprised that she was not sleeping in her bed. He thinks that her behavior has changed since the hunt. He is sure that it is all because of guilt, although he voluntarily covered it up. He understands that if the arrow had sent him into eternal sleep, her life would have become miserable. It was because of him that the rumors would have spread. He believes that she carries an unnecessary burden of guilt. He recalls her words about being a conductor, being a popular profession, and he understands that she may not want to stay here. He has no right to keep her. If she wanted to leave, she should have been gentler like his mother. His mother was cold, but before the separation, she suddenly became caring. She smiled, and for him, it was a rare happiness. He believed in this happiness without a doubt, and then she left. And now he wonders if Shauna is going to disappear too. He understands that he does not want another guide, even if he has long lost hope of awakening. He wonders why it has to be Shayna, and suddenly notices something odd. He calls her, and then shouts if there is anyone outside. When the maid runs in, he orders that a doctor be called immediately. He no longer hears or feels her breathing. The heart beats, but weakly. He shakes her, calls her to rise, but her hand does not respond. He is sure that she could not have fallen into eternal sleep because her heart is still beating. She was healthy a few hours ago. This is impossible. He wonders in horror if she will really leave him alone in this outbuilding. A servant runs in, and Bliss says that she is not breathing, and her heart is barely audible. The doctor checks his pulse and closes his eyes, although Bliss is sure he felt it. Noah bursts into the room and asks to examine it. He touches her hand and says that he can no longer feel her pulse, and announces that Lady Shana has left them. Bliss smiles strangely and picks her up. Noah worriedly asks where he is going, and Bliss thinks about the Harris family doctor. He is confident that all is not lost yet. It was then that the events that led to his awakening took place, when the Duke refused to help him. He could not bear this injustice and woke up. And after that, a man with red hair approached him, introducing himself as Karl Schneier. He asks to show him this lady and advises her to moderate the cold, otherwise her heart may completely freeze. The young man looks at him menacingly, and he calmly adds that the unfortunate girl's heart might not be able to take it. After some time, the main character opens her eyes and immediately realizes that everything went completely wrong. Her plan to quietly disappear from the novel failed miserably, and events deviated even further from the original. Now all she can do is try to fix everything. She sits up, and Noah asks if she's awake. Shayna says his name in surprise and realizes that he was there, and she almost said too much. He anxiously asks how she's feeling. She replies that she feels fine, takes the water, and thanks him. Noah bows and apologizes, saying he wanted to help but didn't expect this outcome. Shayna replies that it wasn't his fault, it just didn't go according to plan. Noah agrees, but understands that it is not a coincidence. Everything went wrong from the moment she asked him for help. When he told his master about the plan, he ordered him to help the girl, or rather, to make her believe that he would help. The red-haired gentleman said that he was planning to show up at the banquet anyway, and if there was a chance to save the Bliss conductor and attract attention, why not take advantage of it? Noah then asked if that meant he would have to lie to Shayna. Carl responded by asking if he considered her a true friend. Noah responded with confusion. Carl noticed that it was difficult for such a gentle person, but he turned to him. He reminded him of the goal and the determination it required. Noah agreed. And now he understands that he cannot forget about this goal. Shayna notices his paleness and asks what he is thinking about. He realizes he didn't expect to feel guilty. Shayna thanks him for trying to help and asks him not to apologize. She says that she should be the one asking for forgiveness, for asking too much. At that moment, Bliss enters the room and quietly says that she is awake. Noah gets up and says that since he came, he will leave. He thinks about how calm Bliss looks now, even though his mana had recently been overflowing after the news of her entering eternal sleep. Then he not only got out of control, but also took decisive action. Bliss sits down next to her. Shayna notices that he looks calmer than she expected. She smiles and congratulates him on waking up, asking if he feels anything special. He replies that he doesn't know. He holds out his hand and asks her to place her mana in his palm. She thinks he's asking for direction, and does so. He grabs her hand tightly, not letting her pull away. He asks her to continue, and she complies. The next moment, she freezes in surprise. He says that's exactly how he feels now. She realizes that she has succeeded and happily congratulates him. But he suddenly pulls her closer, and he asks why she did it. She's frightened, not realizing that he knows. She asks what he means, but he grabs her face. He demands an answer and notices her fear, asking if she is afraid of him. She whispers that she is in pain. The flow of his mana causes her pain. He pulls away abruptly. She coughs, and he apologizes, saying he couldn't control the flow. She realizes he doesn't yet know how to control mana. He clenches his fist. He says the doctor reported that she ate the poisonous devil's dream flower, and he found dried petals in her room and cup. She realizes that he has discovered everything, but does not seem to know the reason. If she lies, someone else might get blamed, and that could lead to revenge. He says that there is no point in blaming Michael because he checked everything. He asks if there is anyone else. And she asks if the pharmacist helped her. Shayna realizes she has to protect Noah and says no. Bliss recalls how often they spent time together and how they fell silent when he appeared. He saw Noah by her bed with a depressed expression on his face. He says he seemed too calm when he announced her entry into eternal sleep. Shayna replies that a pharmacist has a responsibility to remain calm. He says they couldn't have known in advance whether she would eat the flower. And he asks directly if she had planned to stage her descent into eternal sleep. He apologizes for his suspicions, but he can't get them out of his head. She claims she found the flower by chance while hunting. He asks why she ate it then. She says she wanted to hallucinate. She explains that with the right dose, you can see visions. He doubts it. She asks what other reason there could be. She just got curious. She says she felt a pleasant sensation. He is shocked. She admits she misdiagnosed the dose, apologizes, and promises not to take poison again. He says that everyone has curiosity, but not everyone risks their lives. She replies that she is simply bored at the estate. She wants to walk around the city, make friends, and fall in love. He says that she can't, because she's his guide. He stands up and calls this place a prison for her. She denies it, but he asks her to speak honestly. He asks how long she's been using the flower. She assures him it wasn't long. He asks if she got it from the pharmacist. She replies that she picked it up while hunting. He notices how she tenses up at the mention of Noah and tells her he won't hurt him, lest she hate this place even more. He adds that it doesn't matter what happened. And he notes with bitterness that he didn't know about her penchant for such things. She doesn't understand what he's getting at. He states that he will now keep a closer eye on her. She says in horror that she won't do it again, but he replies that all addicts say that. She vows to start a new life. He asks how she felt after the poison and whether she found the love she desired. She is surprised by his question. He asks if she's interested in poison again. He says with a smile that he, too, is curious. She objects. He jokes that since she's so obsessed with him, he's curious about how good he is. She flushes. He says that since she is so worried, she should look after him too, and for now she should rest. Because she will have a lot of things to do ahead. Left alone, she sighs heavily and thinks how it all went wrong. She was mistaken for an addict, but that was better than if he had realized the truth about her attempt to disappear. She wonders what his words about a multitude of affairs mean, and whether he believes her lies. But the result is the same. From that day on, she is no longer a conductor. The contract is completed upon his awakening, and she is free. Suddenly, there is a knock on the door, and she wonders who could be looking for her so early. The maid comes in, and soon Shayna finds herself in the bath. They dress her and take her out. She sits down at a luxurious table and asks in shock what is happening. The maid replies that from now on, they will prepare breakfasts like this for her. They apologize for their previous departure and promise to serve with all their hearts. Shayna is shocked and does not understand why she is treated like a mistress. She asks why they are behaving like this. The maids bow and beg for mercy. She asks them to stop. She calms down a little but still doesn't understand what's happening. Someone reminds her to take the antidote, and she is surprised. The maid explains that the poison may not have been completely neutralized, and this is the young master's order. Shayna realizes that after Bliss awakened, everyone became afraid of his power. Even Anne's behavior changed dramatically. She realizes that she underestimated his influence, and for Anne, taking a place next to a new, powerful master turned out to be a smart move. The young lady understands that she does not necessarily have to be liked by the maid, but since her attitude has changed so much, she asks to schedule tea in the afternoon. And she adds that there should definitely be a cake with seasonal fruit on the table. Since fate has given her a chance, why not enjoy the attention for a while? Later, she tells the green-haired boy that after the Duke's intervention, everyone suddenly became extremely kind to her. He assumes Bliss took control of the outbuilding and assumed she ate the devil's dream due to poor supervision. The girl asks if the servants are really to blame. Noah replies that Bliss was so shocked that he went into a mana overload and made his conclusions based on his emotions. He gathered all the servants and declared that he would no longer tolerate negligence and ordered them to treat the young lady the same way as he himself. Shayna is surprised because, isn't this how one usually treats the owner? Noah carefully says that perhaps she has become an important person to him. And these words make her think. Once upon a time, she desperately tried to become important to someone. She was kind, listened to complaints, sacrificed her own feelings, but in return she received only emptiness. And I certainly never felt truly important. The irony is that it was after her near sleep that she became important to Bliss. But for some reason it's difficult for her to be happy about this. In the original, Bliss was obsessed with the main character to the point of madness, casting a tracking spell, not allowing her to leave, and crossing all boundaries. Shayna hopes that this won't happen to her and asks if anything else happened. Noah reveals that Bliss had a falling out with Michael, suspecting him of handing over the poisonous flower. Michael got angry and chased him all the way to the outbuilding. But after their conversation, his behavior changed dramatically. He turned pale and looked genuinely scared. Shayna wonders if Bliss intimidated him. Noah admits he doesn't know the details, but the atmosphere was intimidating. The girl wonders if it's safe to resign now. After all, she was planning to submit her resignation today. She realizes that there is no turning back and tells Noah directly that she is quitting. The contract is completed after Bliss awakens, and she thanks him for his support and silence. Noah replies that it's nothing. Shayna adds that, thanks to the Marquis, the mana overload was quickly dealt with and she was brought back to life in time, for which she is sincerely grateful. Noah sheepishly says he expects nothing in return, and neither does Mr. Carl. Shayna is surprised by his selflessness. She still wants to express her gratitude, and he replies that there will be another opportunity. He mentions that Bliss is going to contact them later, and Shayna is surprised. But she reminds that from today she no longer works here. And he says that he will find a way to thank the Marquis. Noah gently adds that even if things don't go according to plan, she shouldn't be disappointed. She thanks him and suddenly realizes that for some reason she doesn't feel completely confident. Where does this indecision come from? Later, she walks into Bliss's office and he asks what happened. She says she has something to say. The white dragon intervenes, taunting her for being weak in the face of her own desires. He adds that modern people are too eager to pursue pleasure. Shayna understands that even the dragon suspects something, but she will still have to lie. She asks Bliss if he is busy. He answers with a question, and she notices a stack of letters on the table. He explains that he is writing letters to the nobles, whom he caused inconvenience at the banquet. Shayna realizes that it was her fault that the excess happened and apologizes. He asks if she took the antidote. She replies that she drank every last drop. He notices the paper in her hands. She hides it behind her back, realizing how awkward it is to hand over the application now. But he decides that it is fair and hands over the sheet. She says her contract is over. Bliss looks coldly at the paper and asks if she is going to leave him. He even thinks it's a joke. She explains that an awakened mage no longer needs a guide. He smiles and says she's oversimplifying things. Let him laugh at him, deceive him, and play as much as he wants. But he doesn't joke about leaving. After all, she knows better than anyone how much he cares for her. Shayna understands that he is angry, and today, this anger is stronger than yesterday. But she still doesn't see the connection between his feelings and the termination of the contract. She asks why she can't leave. After all, this is the usual procedure. He declares that he still needs a guide. She is astonished. The white dragon explains that Bliss needs to avoid excess mana. After awakening, his mana became unstable. Bliss thanks her for everything she's put into him, but says help is still needed. She understands that it is not only about this, and he's surprised that he's already communicating with the keeper. The dragon confirms this. Bliss says he hasn't held her hand in a long time, and because of the unstable mana, he can't break the contract. He tears up her statement and declares that he needs a conductor now more than ever. She looks at the torn paper and feels her plan crumbling. He reminds us that there is a competitive hunt next month. And before that, he must tame the mana. Shayna recalls that in the novel, it was while hunting that she fell into eternal sleep on his 20th birthday. Now that he has awakened, her role is secondary, and perhaps the chance to leave will come later. She asks if she can leave once she stabilizes his mana. He readily agrees, and she is delighted, but surprised by his sudden change. He asks why she is upset, and he admits that it hurts him to see her desire to leave. Shayna is shocked. He said he was sad. He had never spoken about his feelings before. Had awakening changed him? He orders her to continue the direction from tomorrow. When she leaves, she decides to do everything perfectly, stabilize his mana, and then he will be able to leave, albeit later. Looking at the torn contract, she thinks that she needs to hold on a little longer. The dragon asks Bliss why he did it. He assures that he can handle it himself. It just takes a little time. Bliss replies that time is short and asks the dragon not to talk to Shayna alone anymore. The dragon is surprised and asks if he wants to punish her. He admits that the owner is disappointed, but Shayna is acting strange. The dragon suggests simply terminating the contract and sending her to a good place for treatment. But Bliss refuses. He says that the dragon doesn't care whose side he takes. The dragon objects and reminds that after awakening, guides usually leave. Bliss replies that he never thought about it and took her presence for granted. The dragon asks why. Bliss is silent. The dragon realizes that his master is more stubborn than he seemed. The next day, Shayna comes to him and offers to start the direction. She asks about the state of the mana. The dragon replies that the suppressed mana has fully unfolded. Bliss says he can feel it moving as clearly as the blood in his body. But due to awakening through excess, mana is unstable and much more difficult to control. Shayna suddenly remembers the moment she woke up and wonders if it all happened, because Bliss had poor mana control back then. Fluffy explains that the better the owner manages mana, the faster he recovers. But if control is weak, rejection begins. When a person experiences rejection in excess, he loses his composure, so at such moments Bliss needs to be especially restrained so as not to waste his magic. Shayna says that her direction is precisely to prevent this, and the dragon confirms that mana control is directly related to peace of mind. Strong emotions and external stimuli have a strong impact on her, so there is only one way left. Training to ensure that no external factors can throw you off balance. And that's exactly what Shayna is here for. She nods seriously and promises to try her best. Bliss notes that she is now full of enthusiasm and helps with all her heart. And then she'll simply stop being his guide. Shayna thinks he's teasing her, and he asks if she can really help him harness his mana. The dragon suggests stimulating mana while channeling. It will be more effective. Shayna asks if this will lead to a loss of composure. Fluffy confirms and says that it is necessary to understand what can throw the owner off balance. Bliss asks if they want to anger him. Shayna wonders if her betrayal will be the trigger. Her feigned immersion into eternal sleep, her excess of mana, her attempt to quit after all her efforts. But Bliss suddenly says it's most likely a competitive hunt. Shayna is surprised, and the dragon asks if he'd like to lead the way. The girl looks at him cautiously. He takes her hand, and Shayna notices that he does it differently now, not as easily as before. The dragon asks what exactly is troubling the owner. Bliss admits that she is afraid that she won't have time to learn how to control mana before the hunt. But he is obliged to participate. Shayna involuntarily shudders. He immediately asks if it hurts her. She asks him not to get angry and not to overexert himself, and if he can't take control of the mana, then he doesn't have to participate. He declines, saying he'll definitely go and show them what he's learned. Shayna asks who exactly. His face turns cold. He replies that he will show this to Duke Huff, because he wants to send him to a large-scale mass immersion into eternal sleep of monsters in the Empire. Shayna realizes that this is the same hunt, only on a much larger scale, where magicians, knights, and healers move in the cardinal directions. Bliss believes the Duke wants him to prove his abilities and restore his reputation. Shayna asks why participating now is so important for that. He explains that the Duke is aware of the instability of his mana after awakening through excess and intends to personally carry out the direction. Bliss admits that he's already tried to work with him and does not want to repeat it. Shane becomes curious about what kind of classes these were. He says that by refusing, he received a condition, and she asks what it was. If he does not demonstrate perfect control during the hunt, the Duke himself will take charge of his direction. Shayna understands that his words about the need for a guide were sincere. He adds that he might have to put on a show, and if control isn't complete before the hunt, she'll have to participate too. Shayna is shocked. She immediately declares that she will not go. At that moment, a sharp pain makes her pull her hand away. Bliss asks if she really dislikes him so much that she can't be around him. She exclaims that this is not what she meant at all. It's just that monsters scare her, and when she hunts, she always gets the worst assignments. That's why she doesn't want to go there, but she doesn't feel disgusted when she's around him. She asks not to be misunderstood. He remains silent, and she realizes that she has relaxed too much. She adds that if she goes with him, the Duke might become suspicious. Bliss replies that if she says she likes him a lot, she can walk beside him without questions. After all, it's as if she can't live without him, so he has no choice but to let her be there. Shayna is shocked, because recently he called her addicted to poisonous herbs, and now he is hinting that she is stalking him. She turns the conversation to the keeper and says that she will try her best before the hunt, but if her help is not enough, can't the dragon help alone? Fluffy replies that he can, but Bliss interrupts and says that until the keeper grows up, he is useless. The dragon repeats this word and adds with resentment that he was not even given a name. Shayna asks Bliss not to speak so harshly because he will hurt his guardian. He replies that he didn't say anything bad about her and asks why she is protecting the dragon. She says they both desperately need his help. The guardian is surprised, and Shayna assures them that they need his advice and reasoning. The dragon clarifies what she means. She asks if their efforts in a month will be enough to stabilize the mana, mentally pleading with him to answer positively. Fluffy says that even if you miss the little things, trying hard should be enough. Shayna nods in relief. She promises to stabilize the mana before the hunt, but Bliss will have to work with her. Then they will succeed. and she understands that she will have to support the keeper's morale. After some time, Bliss says that she did a great job today and the direction is complete. Shayna looks at her hand and he asks if it hurts. She replies that she's already gotten used to his mana. He asks her to tell him right away if it hurts, and she admits that she doesn't like to endure pain. He puts on his coat, and she asks where he is going. She's shocked to hear he's going to town. He's really leaving the estate. Bliss says he has received permission from the Duke and wants to inspect the shopping street now that the ban has been lifted. She asks if he will go alone. He says yes. She remarks with a hint of sarcasm that he will probably have fun. After all, traders from all over the country have flocked to the city, and it's very lively there now. He replies that he'll tell her about everything interesting. She adds that there are probably a lot of handsome, rich, and well-built men there. And she looks at him, wondering if he really will go alone. He feels her gaze, and he asks if she wants to go with him. She agrees with a smile and asks him to wait. He sighs and says, "That's wonderful." In the carriage, she beams with joy, and he asks if she likes it that much. She replies that she does, and he looks calm. The dragon also asked to come along. Bliss asks, "What's so interesting about the city?" She tells him that he shouldn't be ashamed to be happy, but he replies that he will be busy with things. And he adds that he has no intention of looking for a handsome rich man with a good body, which makes her change the subject. She asks why he is going to town, but he says she doesn't need to know. She is angry and does not understand his coldness. In the city, she is amazed by its size, the multitude of cafes and shops. Everything seems incredibly interesting to her. She looks at the jewelry and he immediately asks if she wants it. She is silent, then asks if he had anything to do, and offers to arrange a time to meet. It sounds like she wants him to leave her alone. She gets irritated that he constantly asks if she wants to buy something. He replies that he will worry even more if they are separated, and she resigns herself to it. She looks at the earrings again. He immediately asks if she wants them. She holds the earring to his ear and says they are clean and shimmering. And with a smile, he adds that they suit him. He turns away and says he doesn't need the earrings, and she puts them back. Then he notices the amber earrings. He puts them to her ear and says they suit her. She looks at him and he asks if she likes them and hands them back. The dragon notes that mages usually give jewelry to show affection. Bliss says she'll look for a necklace, and Shayna sheepishly admits that she rarely wears jewelry. He asks what she would like, and she is surprised by the sudden question. After thinking for a moment, she replies that she would prefer a man to jewelry, and he looks at her in surprise. Bliss says that since she rarely wears jewelry, it's not the jewelry, but the men. And if men are her constant attraction, then it means she's had a lot of encounters. Shayna is surprised and immediately denies it. She realizes all her encounters were only in novels, and he asks why. After all, she came to the Duke's house at 15 and now insists she'd never dated anyone before. Shayna, shocked, exclaims that it's true. He continues, asking if it might have happened here before, with the servants of the outbuilding. The girl replies that if anyone were to hear such a thing, she'd be considered a fan of office romances. Bliss says that she made him think that way, and Shayna remarks that his behavior has long struck her as odd. Then she asks why he constantly interferes in her personal life. Because every time he acts like a strict father, Bliss freezes when she hears that word. He repeats it several times as if he doesn't believe it, and Shayna continues calmly. She says that she will figure out her life herself, and by the way, he doesn't have a clear ideal type either. He agrees, and she adds that even if he's not there now, he will be eventually. Bliss replies that's fine, but she definitely won't be his type. Shayna gets angry and asks if there's really no one around him he even likes, even just physically. He replies that there is. She clarifies what exactly attracts him, and he says it's inner qualities that matter most. He likes kind and strong people who smile genuinely, and those who are brave enough to help others with all their hearts. Shayna realizes he's describing someone like Haley. The novel's main character fits this description perfectly, both in appearance and character. Shayna turns away and says that with such taste he will definitely find the perfect girl. Bliss asks what she's getting at, and she reminds him that he called her a flirt, even though she's not one. She again emphasizes that all the men in her life existed only in books. And then she realizes what she said and becomes embarrassed. He asks if she has ever fallen in love with writers, and she cries out that no, just with handsome book characters. And if he wants to laugh, let him laugh. But he just smiles and nods. Then he starts teasing her, saying he's worried because he didn't know how innocent she was. Shauna feels ashamed. She asks him to stop because bookish men really touch her heart, and he replies that this is exactly why he is worried. He takes one brooch and says that it will go well with her mage outfit. Shayna agrees that pink is beautiful, but adds that blue would suit him better. He says that he won't wear the brooch, but she can, and puts it in her hands. Shayna asks him to listen because he is still trying to give her a gift. He quickly replies that he doesn't, and she feels that it's too hasty. She wonders if he's really trying for her. It's their first time in the city together, and he already wants to buy a gift. He says no again. She approaches and asks with a smile if he wants to make his guide happy. He sheepishly asks her to stop talking nonsense and explains that he came for a magical hunting tool. Shayna notices that they still haven't stopped at the right shop. He says he'll go there now and meet her in an hour. Shayna thinks she's finally been released. The white dragon asks her not to get lost, and at that very moment he ends up on her shoulder. Bliss says that the dragon can't be trusted either, so he'll go with her. Fluffy is indignant, considering himself the most reliable guardian. Bliss asks Shayna not to leave the dragon, and she replies that the keeper himself is new to the city. Fluffy assures that he will instinctively find his way, but is still worried about his owner's words. He offers to go together, and Shayna asks if Bliss can handle it alone. He replies that they'll find out everything later, and they part ways. Shayna reminds herself that she's an adult now. She goes further, tries the sweet, and thinks that the food on this street is incredibly delicious. She decides to ask for the same dish in the outbuilding, and the dragon approves of the idea. Suddenly, she notices a familiar figure. It's Henry, and she's surprised he's here. The dragon asks if he's the eldest son of the Huff family. Shayna hides around the corner and watches, and the dragon asks who he's talking to. She assumes it's a friend, but he doesn't look like an aristocrat, and she wonders if Henry has become friends with someone of lower status. The man smiles, and Shayna realizes that Henry is not as closed off as he seemed. She whispers to the dragon whether Bliss met Henry after waking up. Fluffy replies that the master had been to the estate, but hadn't invited him, and asks why she cares. She replies that she just does, but thinks that Henry might have developed an inferiority complex because of Bliss. She hadn't seen Henry use nature magic while hunting, so perhaps he wasn't capable of it yet. Later, they'll be forced to send monsters into eternal sleep across the Empire, and then their conflict could really flare up. She hopes they don't fall out before then. She continues her walk and overhears conversations about the harsh winter. People hope they are prepared for a possible monster attack. One says the land is controlled by the Huff family, another doubts the effectiveness of the protective equipment trade. Shayna understands that the people aren't so fond of the Duke. They say that even with all their shopping, they can't keep up with the high-class monsters, and all they can do is wait for the Duke to return. This year, he will be heading to the South region again, and Shayna is thinking about this place. Haley should be there. In the novel, after being put into eternal sleep by his incompetent guide, Bliss abandoned the mages and chose the path of a knight. But before joining the guild, he participated in a mass immersion of monsters into eternal sleep. There he met Haley, made her his new guide, and miraculously awakened. If he traveled to the southern region, a meeting was inevitable. But Shayna didn't fall into eternal sleep, and Bliss woke up differently, and the plot had already changed. She wonders what will happen if he does become interested in Haley. Even if the handler and the ward don't get along, there can be an attraction between them, and Shayna hopes that they will at least get along. At this time, the seller greets her and offers the best accessories from all over the country. Shayna thanks him and realizes that the decorations here are truly unusual. Some earrings catch her attention. She asks the price and realizes she can't afford them. She's thinking about a birthday gift for Bliss, and earrings would be perfect. The salesperson compliments her on her taste. He says that the blue stone is mined only in the western region, and people believe that the spirit of the sea lives in it, so they wear it as an amulet. Shayna is amazed and says she'd like to have such a powerful amulet. The seller asks if she's in danger. She replies that she wants to give it to one person, and he convinces her to buy the earrings, as they will strengthen the hearts of both of them. But the price is too high. She asks, what if this person goes monster hunting? And the seller replies that things are more complicated then. Shayna says the main thing is to save lives and protect others. Every time he goes hunting, she can't sleep from anxiety. The seller asks her not to cry and asks how much money she has, offering an alternative, but she feels that this is the amulet she needs. He explains that he cannot sell it cheaper, otherwise he will be at a loss. He also wants to help, but he cannot return to his family empty-handed. Shayna realizes that he has cleverly outplayed her, and the dragon notices that there are no tears in his eyes. The bargaining falls through, and the seller apologizes. Shayna thanks him. Suddenly, someone turns to her and says that it hurts him to see such a kind lady sad. He offers to relieve her of her sorrow. Shayna is shocked, because she didn't even cry. The dragon doesn't understand what's happening either. She says everything is fine, but notices that the man's face is hidden by a hood and looks familiar. She recognizes him as the one who was with Henry. He removes his hood, apologizes, and asks her not to worry. Shayna realizes that it is Prince Fabian. She is shocked, and he asks how she is feeling because she has turned pale. She notices his red eyes, because in the Empire only the prince and his mother have such eyes. She says everything is fine, but a voice comes from behind. This is Henry. The prince asks if they know each other, and Henry replies that she is his younger brother's guide. Shayna dreams of disappearing, but doesn't know how. The prince smiles and asks to introduce them, but Henry asks him not to joke. Shayna realizes that they have been best friends since childhood, and she thinks that if she had recognized Fabian earlier, she would have run away. Henry introduces them. The prince smiles. Henry calls Shayna Bliss's guide, and she realizes she should just smile. The prince jokes that Henry introduced him too dryly, and Shayna hopes his title isn't spelled out in full. The prince asks if he can call her Miss Shayna, and she agrees. He adds that Henry is generous and their communication is free because of friendship and asks her not to be nervous. He hands the young lady a small box, opens it, and asks her to accept the gift. Inside is the very earring she was looking at. Shayna is shocked and wonders when he managed to buy it. Henry asks what it is, and the prince replies that Miss Shayna wanted to give a gift to a loved one before the competitive hunt. Henry immediately clarifies that she really is going to give this to Bliss. He asks if she came to town alone or with him. Shayna replies that they are together. Henry says he was just heading to the estate and suggests they take the same carriage. Shayna, shocked, wonders if he's doing this on purpose. Meanwhile, the prince says he'll be away for a while, and Henry warns him to be careful. The prince asks Shayna not to forget their meeting and to accept the gift. She thinks she doesn't need him or the jewelry, as long as this is all over. But she says out loud that she will not forget his sincerity, but she cannot accept the gift because it will leave a heaviness on her heart. She accepts only his good intentions and leaves with Henry. He asks where Bliss is, and Shayna replies that he's at the magical tool shop. The prince grins and throws the box. The seller calls out to him, saying that he dropped the gift, but the prince replies that he did it on purpose. He notices that the merchant is very clever. Then he steps on the box and says he's scamming him by selling cheap ore as amulets. Meanwhile, Bliss is already standing there with her purchases. He notices what is happening. When Shayna calls out to him, Bliss sees her next to Henry and says that he did not know about such a meeting. Henry replies that they just ran into each other, and Shayna smiles and nods. Henry offers to return together in his carriage, but Bliss thanks him and says that they have their own. Henry insists because he needs to talk to his brother. Shayna says that if they need to discuss business, she can go separately. Bliss puts a hand on her shoulder and tells her not to talk nonsense. He wonders if she's decided to leave him for her own safety. Shayna thinks at least someone should survive. Bliss asks Henry if they can talk in front of her, and she silently asks for a refusal. But Henry says he doesn't care. Bliss asks Shayna to stop talking like she's in the way, and she can only agree. He hands her the package and she asks what's inside. Bliss replies that they're her favorite cookies. Shayna looks at him surprised. He smiles, and she thanks him for the treat. They get into the carriage and drive to the outbuilding. The atmosphere on the road is tense. Bliss asks Henry what he wanted to talk about. Henry asks why Bliss still keeps the conductor around, and Shayna realizes the conversation is about her. Henry says that Bliss has already awakened and does not need a guide. Shayna wonders if he doesn't know about the unstable manna. If the Duke knows, why don't the others? She thinks it's for the best, because knowing the truth, Henry could interfere with the stabilization. Bliss is about to answer, but Shayna interrupts him and says that she decided to stay. She adds that it is difficult for her to leave her beloved young master, so she will stay with him a little longer. She then looks at Bliss, begging him to confirm her words. He agrees, but he can't pretend he doesn't know anything. Henry remarks that if she's so attached, it means Bliss treated her well. Shayna says it's true, and he even took her into town today. Henry remarks that he simply combined the trip with his business. Shayna senses that Henry is suspicious of them and says that Bliss wanted to buy her a birthday present. Henry asks if those cookies are the gift. Shayna confirms, saying they're her favorite sweet. She tries it and almost spits it out. She looks at Bliss in shock, and he says that he heard about her love for these cakes. Henry remarks that they are enchanted, and Shayna quickly points out that Bliss created them himself, as the original is hard to find. Henry insists that she finish it since it's her favorite treat, but she says she'll save it for later. Henry thinks his brother is acting strange when he conjures sweets. He wonders if Bliss will be able to let her go later. Bliss asks if that's the point of this conversation. Henry replies no, and suggests they train together before the hunt. He considers it important to unite before the event, as he had previously trained with Michael. This will be the first hunt, where Bliss will consciously use magic. Shayna understands it's a safety issue, but she's afraid that during training, Henry will notice the unstable manna and the attack could lead to injury. Bliss asks why his brother refused to teach him before. Henry replies that he hasn't reached the required level then. Bliss thanks him for the offer but declines. He says he's not ready yet. Henry gets angry and asks who hasn't reached the level. He accuses Bliss of arrogance and says that as a brother, he has the right to appreciate his strength. Bliss calmly replies that he agrees and asks to set a time. When they leave, Shayna, shocked, asks why he agreed. Bliss says that he wouldn't have been able to refuse anyway, and training isn't the most important thing. Something else is more important to him. Shayna asks why he provoked him then. He looks away and says he wanted to see his expression. He had previously looked forward to training together, but he realized that it would not happen. He was afraid to ask, thinking that he would be ignored, but now his brother himself showed interest. Shayna asks if that's why he made him angry, and he smiles. Admitting it, she grabs his hands and asks why he calls himself selfish. She says that he has the right to behave this way now, and he is surprised. Shayna explains that a strong person can prove everything during training and put his brother in his place. Bliss notes that this is precisely what she was worried about in the carriage. Shayna confirms, thinking she was worried for his safety. She says that he should focus on stabilizing his mana and be patient, since he is still stronger than Henry. The dragon supports her and assures her that the master will win. Bliss reminds him that his mana is unstable, but Shayna says he has it. She takes his hands and promises to help. He says her words make him doubts whether she will always be there, and asks if she thinks the same. Shayna looks at their hands and feels a strange thrill. Bliss says her help is important for more than just magic. She asks what he means. He explains that combat training is also necessary, since magic doesn't solve everything, and he has little experience. Shayna warns that Henry may notice instability and take advantage of it. Therefore, it is better to show perfect control and use high-level ice magic to dispel doubts. Bliss asks if she's talking about the highest level, and the dragon warns that it's dangerous. Bliss believes that a few times won't hurt, and if combined with direction, you can expand the boundaries. The dragon agrees and looks at Shayna. Bliss asks her with a smile to be his opponent in training, and she is amazed. He reminds her that she promised to help, but she says she meant support, not sparring. The dragon says that modesty is a virtue, but she is a mage from the association and should be more confident. Shayna thinks about how to gain confidence if she has to face one of the strongest. Bliss says she just needs to improve her physical skills, and she's shocked she can handle it anyway. He reminds her of the day Michael almost shot her, and says he can't save her every time. Shayna realizes that perhaps he accepted Henry's offer for the sake of her training. He asks her to take care of him. 2 days later, she somberly wishes him good morning, realizing that she is now training martial arts. But she wanted to focus only on magic. Bliss suggests training outside, since it's warm today. She replies that she is ready, but he advises her to relax first. He says that he has already worked with an experienced servant. Now he will teach her self-defense, and when she masters it, the classes will end. She asks what exactly he will teach her, and he suddenly takes off. He grabs her hand, and he says that he will teach her to escape capture, suggesting that she try to free herself. Shayna is hesitant, but he smiles and asks her to try. She tries to break free, but his grip is almost iron. She is amazed by his strength. He pulls her close and she screams, asking who does this. Bliss explains that this is a humiliating way of immobilizing, and Shayna indignantly replies, "Who does such a thing?" The young man replies that it is not him, but she should not trust others so easily, because it would be unpleasant if someone really immobilizes her like that. Therefore, he asks her to remember this feeling well, so as not to get confused in the future. Shayna tries to use her hands, but he instantly intercepts them. She's amazed at how quickly he noticed her intention and prevented her from using magic. But now she needs to free herself without magic. So she asks the young master how to escape this hold. Suddenly, the main character pulls him towards her, and Bliss asks in surprise what she is doing. The next moment, she hits him in the nose with her forehead with all her strength, and the guy falls to the ground. Shayna exclaims, "Did she do it?" She knocked him down, just like he taught her. Bliss replies that she's done well, and if she's not strong enough, she should attack where she's weak, a lesson she's learned well. He adds that her head is like stone. Standing up, he says that even with such a strong head, one shouldn't act thoughtlessly. It's better to look for other weak points. Shayna looks down, and Bliss immediately notices where she's looking. He's shocked and says it's the wrong place, but Shayna confidently replies that it's a weak spot for all men, and a kick would be most effective. Then she asks if he agrees. She adds that perhaps the knee is even better. But she asks him not to worry, because if she accidentally causes serious harm, she is ready to take responsibility for his life.